A little bit about PolicyMap, and that'll hopefully give you some context about what you're going to see today, data and feature-wise. We are part of a larger parent organization called Reinvestment Fund. They are what is called a Community Development Financial Institution, or CDFIs, as they're sometimes called. CDFIs are basically a community bank with a very specific mission. And in the case of Reinvestment Fund, we are looking to revitalize low and moderate income communities through the Philadelphia Mid-Atlantic region and through some very specific programs, things like affordable housing, of course, but also things like charter schools, grocery stores, and even community health centers. And we've been doing this for a little over 35 years, and we had always used data spatially, meaning that we didn't want to just look at numbers at a zip code or a city or a county. We wanted to be able to zoom into Philly in particular and really see the different makeups of Philadelphia, because the overall number of the city is much different than the different neighborhoods itself. And that's really the genesis of PolicyMap. We wanted to give a tool that users can come to that they're probably familiar with mapping wise, but then start adding a bunch of pieces of data and really having a better understanding of where they're at. So that does mean that a lot of our data is some of these more basic demographic data, because that's really what we use to measure our neighborhoods a little bit. But then we get into some really unique variables about quality of life. And then as a bank, we have data related to banks as well. But then we've also expanded into health data and education data because of our different outreaches and programs. And so what I'll try to show you today is really how the basics of the map works. I'm going to highlight some of the categories of data. And then as you have ideas of data you might use, just jump in, let me know, and we can keep going. All right, so the maps are really simple. There's actually a bunch of different ways to interact with data in PolicyMap, and they're in these tabs in the very top. There is a place that I will take us real quick. Generally show these off a little bit, but I'll send you these links. You don't have to write them down if you don't want to. But if you want to get a broad overview of the different data and categories of data we have within PolicyMap, this page that I'll send you is a really cool place to start. What it does is, as you scroll down, you'll get to this table of contents, which will break up the different categories I'm going to try to summarize when we're in the tool. So that way, if you're looking for something really simple like quality of life or something, this will tell you that within this category that we call quality of life, it's a bit of a hodgepodge category. It's variables that really talk about the community. So it's things like, do they have access to a grocery store? Are they close to SNAP locations? Are they near libraries, brownfield, Superfund sites? But then there are also other types of data that we call data layers, which are aggregate data, meaning that it's shown at a geography. And in this case here, for quality of life, we have crime data from the FBI crime report, broken up by very specific categories of crime. As you get further into the categories, you'll see there's other things like incarceration data, access to the internet, transportation, and so forth. So what it's trying to do on this page is to give you this very broad summary of what you're going to find in this particular category, quality of life, without having to go into the category and like kind of diving through the variables a little bit, because you'll see that it gets very, very specific, and sometimes you get lost. And we do encourage quite a bit of data exploration, but the data summaries page is a good place to start to give you an idea. So we'll spend most of our time on the maps page just to show you how to visualize and customize the data and really share. I'll show you how to download some of these things. But there are other ways to use the tool, and I'll give you just a really brief overview of them so you have an idea of what else you can do within PolicyMap besides just making a map. Because the map part is really the biggest part of our tool, because it is the ability to visualize, but it's also the ability to share data, customize data, download data as well. But we do have the ability for users to compare data. So that's what Tables does. Tables allows you to add locations in the very top bar here. It adds to the bar chart below, and you choose the data you want to compare against. So if you have 10 cities, 6 counties, and you want to compare crime rates, unemployment information, health insurance coverage, or any of the other 50,000 variables that we have to choose from, the tables is a neat place because you can go here add your multiple places you're comparing and just continually change the data that you want to compare it against and save that grouping at any time. So it's a neat place to use that type of data. The reports function is probably a much more traditional way to see data within most tools. These are kind of pre-built reports, so these will show you tables and charts and graphs and such. But each report is pre-built, so you don't have the ability to customize the data, but the data within each report, what we try our best to do is group together similar data sets to build around. A community profile report is a demographic report, but it also talks about the community. So besides just population and race and income, it talks about jobs, crimes, vacancies, housing stock, and so forth. There's a fantastic health report that we worked with a couple of different health agencies to build out. So this is available for your use as well. And then some of our basic reports around our CDFI work, which is rental and housing information. There is a really unique tool that allows you to do a bit of spatial analytics, meaning that you're able to overlay multiple layers of data, giving you a chance to try to find out where data might intersect. So if you're looking to identify a place within the nation or a community that meets very specific criteria, maybe an X percentage of people in minorities, X percentage of crime rates, X percentage of unemployment, those three types of data you can put together in the 3-layer maps function and do kind of a spatial analytics to find those locations. And then the last thing, just really quick, is the ability for you to add your own data into the platform. So the data loader right now is an address-based data loading tool. So if you have data that's already at geographies like counties and zip codes and such, the data loader does not work for that at this time. But you probably have spreadsheets of data, and this allows you to upload those spreadsheets. Our system will geocode the addresses and turn them into points that you can display on the map. We are now HIPAA compliant, so we also work with banks. So a lot of our data is secured enough that you can upload using the tool. You can be even more secure if you want to anonymize your data sets as well. But then all this ties together because once you have data loaded into PolicyMap, you can use it alongside all the other features that we just talked about. But primarily, the maps function allows you to visualize your data with the other data sets that we have in the PolicyMap tool.
Hi, this is Lizette. I just had a question about the reports.
Yeah.
So yesterday I did a 3-layer map and I wanted to see a report on the home mortgage or community profile. And then I was looking on a block level. So is that too small of an area? Because it won't generate the report.
So that's a really good question about geographies. In the case of the reports, the HMDA report in particular, the home mortgage report, the smallest geography from HMDA is, let me know if you guys have any audio problems. The smallest geography from HMDA is the track level, so you won't be able to generate. Sorry about that. We're having internet problems in our building, of course, at the right time. Did you get all that about HMDA and the smaller geography?
No.
Okay, let me repeat that then. Sorry about that. So in the case of the mortgage report for HMDA, the smallest geography that HMDA produces at is the census tract level. So it's above a block group. So
right.
That's
okay.
So
what about community profile?
So that does have block group level data. There are variables within the report that are only at tracks, and what the system will do is will generally do the containment of the block group. So it'll show you the value of the track that the block group is in.
Okay, so that didn't work. Let me go in now while we're still, and I'm going to go ahead and try to do that.
Okay, yeah, and in the case of the HMDA report, if it doesn't say, and I'll have to check the rules, but I thought that the HMDA also does a containment of the block groups, but I can look at that and we'll figure it out.
So once you go ahead and click on get report, I got community profile highlighted for report type. Report location is the predefined location. The location is the predefined location that I had clicked on my map. And now my only option is, it says preview report, but there's no information. It just has says block group 2010.
Sure. If you click on to preview report area, generate report, it'll generate the report.
So where would I find that report?
If you click the next button, so let me see if I can go to the same page so you can see it. Doing something really quick, everyone, just so I can get us to a block group and get a report for it.
Right, but this is from a 3-layer map.
Sure. So on this page here, is there a button that says generate report?
Let me go back and see. Hold on. Let me just do get report. Preview report area. Oh, I see. You have to go up to the top. Got it. Generate report. Got it. Yeah, it's a, oh, I see what kind of report you got. Oh, great. This is exactly what we were looking for. If we can find the actual breakdown of the racial characteristics.
Yep.
This is, Elena, this is what we were looking for.
Yep. And then,
got it.
Unfortunately, as you'll see, some years will not have block group level, and it's just because of this in particular. It's because of boundaries, actually. So it's actually not because there's no data. It's because the vintage of the boundaries you were looking at is the 2010 vintage, meaning that every 10 years the decennial census redraws the boundaries. And so with that, there is a bridge table that we use from the census to bring numbers up to match each year. But some block groups in particular, they're redrawn so much that they don't exist anymore. So in this example here, this particular block group probably was merged to another block group, and that's the reason why it only shows the ACS data, the most recent vintage.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. You answered both my questions that I had today.
Perfect.
Thanks.
So we wouldn't be able to do that with an address. So let's say we don't have a 3-layer map going on, Phil, but instead we have an address we want to put in that location bar. Would we still be able to get the racial breakdown that way as well?
Yeah, definitely. So this allows you to type in an address. And then in this particular address, what you'll have is a point. And from that point, you can do a radius report around that address if you wanted to. Or you can draw a custom region, of course, around the address as well. So both.
Am I just clicking that for us just to see what it looks like?
Sure. So in this case, you don't even have to go from the maps page. You can actually go right to the reports page, select the report, enter the radius of the address.
Radius. Okay.
Choose the size of the radius. So what's the area you want to capture? So this is a half mile.
Literally, yeah, not even probably.
Okay, so we'll stay with half mile for now, because it'll basically still use that same rule. So in this case, there might just be, I think for me, this is my address. So I think there's like 2 block groups that it contains my address. So what this will do is it'll use a really simple 50% coverage rule, meaning that at least 50% of the block group needs to sit within the radius for it to be used in aggregation. And in this case, I have 5 block groups actually now. So this is saying there was 5 block groups that are fully contained, or at least 50% contained within that radius. So you can bring this down if you wanted to, half a mile and so forth.
Oh, and it tells you of the people living in this area, 76, and that was 2014 to 2018. That's the most recent. 76% were white, 5% African American, 17% Hispanic, 11% Asian. Okay, great.
Yep. And then down here you'll get the age breakdown, and you'll get the income breakout as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a neat report. This is actually a report that we built because of our CDFI work, giving us a chance to do a quick snapshot of data for some of the places that we work with. Because it's besides just the demographics that you see, it also starts talking about family types. We're going to expand this because we do have another family type data, household types that we'll expand out. But then it also talks about housing stock, home ownership, so the percentage, so 72% of the households here are homeowners, vacancy information, job unemployment data from BLS, and then job types, and as well as crime data from the FBI crime report. Yep. So yeah, that's probably one of the really neat features of the reports. You can also do what we call custom regions. That includes the ability to make your own boundaries. So we're going to jump really far ahead, and we'll stick with boundaries since that's a really good question. Custom regions are for us basically unique boundaries that are outside of the PolicyMap geography. So you probably have very specific boundaries that you work with. Those boundaries are maybe a containment of roads. It could be a radius from addresses. It can be even other geographies. If you wanted to assemble together, let's say a bunch of zip codes or a bunch of counties or even tracts or even block groups, those are all custom regions, we call them. And so there's 3 unique ways to make it. The first is the draw. So that's just simply just clicking onto the map. So you're dropping the vertices of a target area. You can be as granular as you want about your boundaries. You can still pan around. You can zoom in to get closer to the street level if you need to. But when you're done, you want to click onto the first point, and it will say this is the boundary you want to draw, and you want to give it a quick name. So the drawn custom region has that same rule as the radius, meaning that whatever data you want to aggregate for within that boundary, be it block groups or tracks, it'll use that simple 50% coverage rule. So at least 50% of the block groups needs to sit within your custom region to be used within the aggregation. So in this example, this block group would not be, this one would not be, these 3 would. And so that's kind of the simple rules for aggregation within the coverage. But at the same time, if you need to create a boundary based on other geographies that are in our universe, then you're going to use the assemble custom region. So this allows you to basically take those boundaries that we have in PolicyMap, and initially it'll default to your zoom level. So if you're really focused into a small area of the neighborhood, it'll use the block groups. But up here, as you can see, you can use any of the boundaries that are in our universe. So you can use different vintages. So you can go use the old block groups from 2000 or the newest block groups in 2010. And then I believe we'll have the 2021, if the census goes through correctly, sometime next summer. But then other geographies like zip codes, county, cities. So you can determine the area and how much you want to aggregate within those areas. But assembling is simply just clicking onto the map. And it will allow you to highlight those areas. You can remove things, you can make non-contiguous areas, and then when you're done, save it for that area. And then one of the things that's a little strange with the tool right now is we're in the process of a major upgrade to PolicyMap, meaning that we are updating our entire infrastructure and underlying technology. When we created PolicyMap in 2007, we used a platform that was cutting edge at that time. And now we're in 2020, and of course, cutting edge is really hard to keep up with the current technology. So we spent the last 2.5 years upgrading the underlying technology, and with that, you can actually access it up here under what we call the beta for now, but eventually it'll just flip over and you'll use it. I show us this only because currently in PolicyMap right now, you do not have the ability to edit custom regions. And crazy enough, in the new version of PolicyMap, you can actually edit custom regions that you created from the current version. So you can So the two versions of PolicyMap are actually running side by side. So what you do in what we call the legacy is actually is appearing in the beta, the current version. So I make this point because you can actually edit custom regions within the new version of PolicyMap, which you can't do within the current version. So eventually this will all roll into one update for everyone, so you won't see the difference. But for now, what we try to do is there's a lot that we already created in the new version of PolicyMap, and we wanted to be able to give users that access now. So as you can see, I edited that custom region on the beta, and it affects the legacy. So just in case you have any updates to boundaries in the future, just know you can't edit them now.
And Phil, do you have, is it true last time, I think you said there are more layers in the beta version as well versus the legacy? Can you go up to 5 layers in the beta?
Yeah, let's take a tour real quick, since we'll come back to this for Robert and the guys here. I'll show you guys what the other things you can do. So the 3-layer maps that you saw within PolicyMap is the ability to overlay 3 different indicators. So we realized that there are more options that users want to do, and so currently it's 5. Technically, we can actually expand this to as many layers as we want, but for now, usability, scalability for browsers and stuff, 5 is where we see the breaking point. But I think we're going to do some really cool resource management on our side to see if we can expand this. So the other really neat benefit of the multi-layers is the current version that's in PolicyMap, which is called 3-layer maps, is what is called an AND function, meaning that if you wanted to find out places that have, let's say, an X amount of income, so you can adjust the histogram, and only places that meet this range between 35,000 and 78,000 shows in the map. And then the next one, you can say, oh, these ones, we want to find out who has health insurance maybe. And so this also is the same histogram, but now you can adjust it. And what it's showing you are AND functions. So these are places that meet both criteria of between the 35,000 and 78,000 income, and between 5 and 10 and 13% of the people without health insurance. So it's the intersection of data. And again, you can have up to 5 of these layers. One of the big things that that you can do within spatial analytics tools is kind of managing layers much differently. So this is the overlap of those 2 layers instead of the intersection. So now you have, let me just remove this. So now you have a map that shows the hash are places that meet the uninsured criteria, whereas the blue are places that meet just the income criteria, and then the intersection of the 2. So the overlap is neat because you can see how those 2 layers, instead of just intersecting, how they touch in some places but don't always touch in their overlap. And then again, you can add another layer on top of that and go forth. So hopefully I showed you a cool feature or a new feature within the tool.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, so let's do the basics of what you can do within PolicyMap, and then from there we'll continue a little further. As you saw, the location bar in the very top, it's basically a search bar. So you can search by addresses, but you can also search by geographies. And one of the nice things is that you can type in a handful of keys or characters, and it will match based on a really simple criteria based on population size. So these are zip codes that are listed by population in this case.
Hi, this is Lizette again. What's the difference between tabulation area and zip code?
Sure. So in the case of zip codes by themselves, they are a postal boundary, meaning that only the USPS uses those boundaries. Unfortunately, everyone knows zip codes more than they know a census tract or so. And because the Postal Service doesn't really talk to the census, a lot of times before the zip code tabulation, or ZICTAs as they're sometimes called, before ZICTAs came about, systems had to try to guess and use that coverage rule of what zip or what block groups or tracks fall within a zip code. And sometimes those numbers would be off because zip codes are very unique boundaries. And also zip codes are redrawn almost every month based on delivery access. Because of all that, the census realized that a lot of people use zip codes, and so they created what these are called ZICTAs, or zip code tabulations, which is an approximation of a zip code based on census geographies. And generally they use census tracts to make that aggregation. So if I were to show a zip code, so this is my 19111 zip code, and we can overlay the ZICTA, and you can see most of it matches up except for the park here. So in the case of the ZICTA, it disregards Pennypack Park, which is by its own census tract. And then down here, it clips off parts of it. So it generally doesn't affect too much of the value of between a zip code and a ZICTA, but it will once you get to these more very unique postal routes places.
And I'm sorry, can you just quickly show me where you went to get that layer?
Sure. So you can either search for it, but down in map boundaries down here are all of the boundaries that you can search for within the tool. So you can put zip codes and ZICTAs in the map at the same time.
Great. And I'm sorry to keep jumping in because I only have a few more minutes, but is there a quick way you can show us to pull up a county and then get a list of all of the towns within that county?
Sure. Probably the easiest way to do that is to use the tables page.
Okay. I'm writing down tables page.
What's a county you guys might use?
Nassau.
All right. Florida, New York. Well, close enough. So the easiest way to get a list of cities in a place is put a data set that has generally cities as an aggregation. So in this case,
so it would be cities, towns, you know, I guess subdivisions.
Right. So all you need to do is put one data layer that would have an aggregation to cities. And I always say use a census data set like population. And once you do that, use the download function. And then what this will do is it'll download data, in this case for that very simple data set like population. But from the next page, step 2, you get to choose the geographies within the county. So this will give you a list of every city in Nassau County. And just for fun, you'll have the population for each one of those cities.
Okay, and it could take, how long did that say?
It's
15 minutes?
It's a very scary message, but it doesn't really take that long. Generally, it's done already. The file just needs to generate, and unfortunately, when I use GoToMeeting, it's because I'm on 2 different browsers, and it does these really weird things. The file's done fairly quickly. All right. It says 15 minutes, but generally, if you refresh the browser after 10 or 15 seconds, it'll already download. It's just GoToMeeting does these really weird things for me. All right, let's do one last time here. I know it's a scary message because our developers are more worried about being nice, but the reality is the file is done fairly quickly. Oh. All right, well, sorry about that. Normally it's done fairly quickly. GoToMeeting is not my friend sometimes.
Okay.
But that's probably the download feature is your easiest way to get a list of places within a larger geography, be it counties and such.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. I'm not even gonna wait for that file to generate now. Sorry about that. We're in this weird session with GoToMeeting, and it affects my browser like this. All right, we'll keep going, and hopefully that file will appear. So back to the search. Just understand that the search bar in the very top, the goal is to get you to a place that you're going to work in. The map boundaries is the ability to overlay those boundaries. So instead of having to type in one county at a time, you can overlay all the counties on the map at the same time. You can combine multiple boundaries. So if you want to find out how tracts look like within a county, you can overlay those multiple boundaries. There are some even unique boundaries in here, including things like you can remove things like parks and land use, but you can also add things like flood zones, farmland, and so forth. Otherwise, the map is where you're going to start adding data, and that data is these categories above the map. And these are the same categories that are in that data indicators page that we talked in the very beginning. And there are two very specific and unique data sets you can use within PolicyMap. They're broken up by the columns of every one of these categories that we looked at. So columns 1 and 2 are what we call a data layer. So data layers, all it means is that the data is aggregated to a geography. There's no address level data sets, and generally is these colorful maps that you're familiar with when it comes to looking at data. So layer data, just understand that it is an aggregate and there's no address level data. Whereas data points are data sets that are icons that do represent addresses for that particular data set. As you can see, you can overlay points and layers in the map at the same time. There's some really unique customization when it comes to using points and layers, and they're broken up within the legends for both in here. So we'll talk about one at a time, real simple. And I generally do the layer first, but I'll do the points first because it is one of the easiest things to talk about. Data points are really simple. They're just icons in the map. What we do with these icons and these particular data sets is we try to get as much information as possible about that particular data set, and we turn some of those pieces into what are called filters. And the filter for grocery retail locations includes is it a full service, is it a limit service, and then the type of grocery retail service they are, conventional, supermarket, superettes, and such. And so what this allows you to do is, instead of seeing all the points of grocery stores on the map at the same time, you can say, I just want to show dollar stores on the map. And then it draws and basically just shows only the stores that are considered dollar stores at that time. You can combine filters together. So meaning that if you wanted to find dollar stores and let's say military commissaries, you combine those two filters together. So now we show both dollar stores and military stores. You can also combine different categories at the same time. So you can say, of these stores that are dollar stores and military commissaries, which ones are considered full service versus limited service? It should be none of them in this case. And then finally, you can also take, as you can see, the color code function for one of the categories and basically show that this will put all the stores back on the map. And now it's showing that anything in the black are dollar stores, anything in the orange are conventional stores, and then the natural gourmet stores and such in between. So points are really simple. Points are unique because you can filter the points, allowing you to control how many points are being shown on the map at the same time. The one unique function of points that you combine points together. So if you want to find out grocery stores, let's say you want to find out super centers and where they are in relationships to hospitals or so, you can combine multiple points together. That's the one big difference between the data in PolicyMap. Whereas data layers, which we'll talk next, you will use the 3-layer maps or the multi-maps to combine multiple layers together. But in the case of points, you can have as many point data sets on the map at the same time, including your own points if you use the data loader. But in the case of data layers, I'll use this really cool one, which is the social vulnerability index. Again, layer data means there's no address level data associated to it, but there's a lot of very unique customization for layer data. And the first thing that's really important is the title for data layers. It'll be a very simple sentence, but within the title, you'll always have a description, and that description will allow us to be very explicit about the data, maybe some methodologies, but it'll give you much more information besides just the comment of it's a social economic status of vulnerability. This actually explains what indicators are used to determine the social economic part, which is poverty, unemployment, per capita, and high school education.
Lizette had to leave, but she wanted to know what the source data is for the median home value in each block group or census tract.
Sure. What was the data again?
It's the source data for the median home value.
Oh, okay. So that under housing, there's two variables for home sale data. Median home value is the ACS. So this is a much different number than what you'll see versus actual home sales. This is basically people writing in their census form the estimated value of their homes. And then it's also normalized as well as averaged because it is a median versus an average from actual home sale numbers. So just understand, I always try to make the point between home value and home sales because those are two different methodologies, and so the numbers are generally dramatically different between the two.
Okay, so home sales are going to be more specifically reported because you can actually prove that or what?
That's exactly right. Yeah, so home sales are, and generally you can see the maps are similar in that because it's not too wildly different. But the difference is home sale. All right, so in this case, it's much closer. So the home sale data, this is from Zillow. Basically, Zillow gave us all of their individual home sales, and we aggregated it up to geographies, and then we show the medians for those values in between that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and that takes us to really quickly the source data itself. If you ever want to learn more about a data layer that you add on the map, click on to the source link in the legend, and this will take you to the data directory, which is a really cool page for a lot of data nerds. So this page here will, for us, be as transparent as possible about the data that you're looking at. So in the case of Zillow, this is all the individual sales that we pull from them, the years and quarters that we aggregate for them, the link to their actual research data. So if you are a nonprofit, you can actually work with them and get the old Z-Track data basically, and do your own analysis. And then this is our methodology that we explained a little bit of how we use the data and create it in PolicyMap.
I don't want to jump the gun either. I don't know how much longer or what else you wanted to cover, but we do a lot of sharing of maps in the office. And what I'm finding, Phil, is that I've created numerous 3-layer maps. And remember, I emailed you about the fact that, it doesn't necessarily print off with the data set information. So I've kind of found a creative way to do that and print them off nicely for sharing internally. But I also want to share a link to the actual maps on PolicyMaps themselves. And what I found is that after I've saved them to, let's see, if you hover over the little saved cassette icon, and you go into, actually, view your saved work. If you go into the file icon on the top upper right corner of the screen.
It's loading.
It gives you, okay, so this looks different from what mine usually looks like. It gives me a little box, and I was able to create like a folder for, let's say, Brooklyn neighborhoods, right?
Yep.
Well, it doesn't allow me to share that folder with anybody externally, or even that any other users within PolicyMap.
Right. So at this time, the share feature is limited to just the sharing of individual maps. The share for save work is something that we are taking a much larger initiative in our work that will eventually allow you to create a project like this and be able to share it with other users. But for now, the save work is only for your account. You're not going to share from within save work. You would share it directly from the map page itself.
So when I'm actively on a map, that's the best time to share it.
Yep. Yeah. So
and
this
it will be shared individually, one at a time, right? You can't clump maps together because, like you said, you have to be on the active map page.
That's correct. Yeah. At this time, the share feature is limited to just the map feature, because you discovered that in the 3-layer maps, you don't have the ability to share 3-layer maps. So it is a bigger thing that we plan to do with the share feature, which is expanding its functionality quite a bit.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep, yeah. So I have to reset this map real quick, but let me just go back, and we'll kind of wrap this up a little bit to show you some last details of the layer map, which is probably one of the most important features, because I showed you the filters for points, allowing you to really show different types of points in the map, color code the points, and so forth. This, in the case of data layers, is probably one of the most unique ways to customize data, because with layer data, initially what you get is all of the default variables that you would get, which is the default year, the variable, the cut points, the geographies, and so forth. So the legend initially will give you all the tools to be able to read the map. So it's telling you that you're looking at census tracts from 2010 in this aggregation. It's telling you that purple areas are tracts that have a median income of 84,000 or more, and the lighter color is 38,000. You can click onto a place, and what this will do is give you the value of that geography, but also the benchmark of the areas that it sits in. So this tract sits within a zip code of 114,000, the county subdivision of 130, and so forth. But the legend for layer data is one of the more unique ways to customize data. And one of the biggest ways to do it is to make your own cut points. Because initially what you get here are quintiles. Our system takes the total number of geographies, lays it out in that histogram that you saw previously, and groups it together based on concentration of data in FIS. And so quintiles are good enough to be able to show you quite a bit of separation from places, but many times you probably need to make cut points that are much more specific to your work, or much more importantly, many times you want to focus your readers to places that you want them to look at, and the ability to make those cut points is one of the most key parts. So to do that, you're going to click onto the field. It releases the ranges, so you have the ability to even change the ranges. So if you want to do a very simple yes or no color, then 2 ranges is what you would use. You can expand a little more and use 3 and so forth. So I'm going to use 4, and then from here I can say I want to show places that have extremely low income, maybe below 15,000, but then from this I can go a little higher to maybe around the poverty rate, which is I believe 45,000 for a family of 4, and then from this I can go extremely high and just try to cut off places that have extremely high income, which is like maybe 120,000. And what this does is it simplifies the map for your audience. So they're not trying to navigate through the neighborhood to find places that have low income, high income, rounding off dollars and so forth. This is straight up saying these places have below 15,000, these places have above 120,000. And there's no confusion for your readers, but it also is a much more powerful way to present data visually because it makes them focus onto places. So that's probably one of the biggest things I always point out in the legend. There are other ways to customize the data in here. You can change the year, going back in time. Probably just as important way to customize data is the variable, because initially the variable is completely how the data is presented on the map. So in this example, we're looking at household incomes, and so the default variables for that, it would be dollar amounts, because you want to see income as dollars. But in this example, then you can actually see percent change calculations from the available years. So you can see an 18-year change between the decennial census and the current ACS, or a 5-year change between the two ACSs that are available. And same thing here, the legend will change from dollar amounts to percentages, and now the percentages represent an increase of 28% or 25% or more, or a decrease of 1.8% or less. And same thing here as well, you can control these ranges. So if you're trying to identify places that have an increase of over 100%, but at the same time a decrease of, let's say, 25% and 0. Then we have these much more telling maps that show areas that have dramatically lower income growth, as well as places that have a doubling income growth in those places. And then the last thing that I'll just cover for us on the maps page, and if there are any other questions, let me know. And that's basically what we just talked about, which is the ability to save and share your work. The easiest way to share a map is to save it, because this allows you to use this window here that's fully interactive. So you can click and drag the map around, you can zoom in and out. What it's saying is that within this window that you see here is exactly what you're going to export. So whatever zoom level, whatever geography and such is here. So we do give you some options to customize the export. So you can make the font larger and smaller. You can change the orientation. You can change the format of how you want to use it. PDFs are really great for an email attachment or a printout, whereas a PNG is probably better for putting it into maybe a Word document, PowerPoint, website, and such, because it's a digital file. The title is editable, so if you are working on a program or project or client, you can customize the title for that map. You can remove all that as well, so that way you can have a clean map, and then some additional options, including the data description. So if you are adding one of the more complex data sets, this adds the description for your readers to access. The export is a static map, so it's a snapshot of data in time for this particular map that you see here. And again, you can do whatever you want with that particular map, but the map itself is just an image. And as we were talking about, there are ways to share an interactive map with your readers, and that's using the share feature in the very top. So this share feature does a couple of different things. The first is the link. Basically means that if you were to copy this link and embed it into a website, email, PowerPoint, and such, whoever clicks that link opens the map exactly as you see here, to the zoom level you have, with the data you have on the map, with any customization that you did to that map. So it gets them to an interactive tool without you having to write a long URL or have them recreate that layer.
All right, Phil, I quickly had to go to another page. What was that? That seems very important.
Oh, sure. So this is the share feature that we probably were talking about. And again, the missing function of share is that it doesn't work with 3-layer maps. But in the case of share from the maps page, this is where you would make these interactive links. So,
oh, great. Thank you.
Yep. So the link basically takes them to the map. The email, you're just going to email that link. So it bypasses the need to have to put it into an email. There's social media, and then probably one of the coolest feature is if you have a web page that you're writing things about, or you're trying to have much more information or put something interactive for the reader, the embed feature basically puts an interactive map onto your website. So if you've seen any of our blogs that we write, I'll just pull one up real quick so you can kind of see some of these things. What we do is we create, well, not with the new maps, of course. So what we do is these, within the blogs, are these what are called embedded maps, and then from that the reader can pan within the map, they can click, they can zoom, and so forth. So it's basically PolicyMap, but it's an interactive map that's sitting on your website for users to interact with. And that's what the embed feature does. All right, other than that, there's some other ways to collaborate, share things between users. So the share feature is one of them. Custom regions. When you do create a custom region, it'll appear in the menu here under your account. And as you can see, you can delete them, but you can also share them with other users. So this allows you to put a custom region you drew within your account into another user's account, and you can see who created it when it was created. Same function with the data loader. If you upload a spreadsheet of addresses and you want to share within the organization, the data loader feature gives you the ability to share data sets with other users, and that way whoever created the data set allows myself, to be able to access that particular data. So those are the handful of ways to share things between organizations. As I mentioned, we're going through a much larger kind of grouping together of these share features that exist within different features right now. And eventually it'll be in one more centralized location to share more things. All right, other than that, any other questions or things I can talk about? I'm happy to answer. Data that you're interested in?
No, I think that's it for now. I'm sure we're just going to need everybody to kind of get on there and mess around with it a bit. And,
Exactly.
you know, it's going to depend on what projects we're working on.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Can you show me one more time the basics, that summary page that you were talking? I didn't see how you got to that.
Sure. Yeah. The easiest way to do it is to go right to the reports page up in the very top here. And then once you get here, choose the report and then choose the area. And the area either is so what we call predefined geographies. This means they're boundaries that exist that are probably familiar. But you can do a radius report. If you draw a custom boundary, you can access that.
Okay.
And then
the block, I didn't, what does the block mean when you're saying block, blocks?
Sure.
Are you literally saying a block, a street block, or?
Sure. So we have plenty of time. I'll give you my little spiel about boundaries, and we'll leave it at that.
So, I didn't mean to slow us down. I just, I was curious about that.
Sure. No. It's a really good question because it gives you a bit of context for what these geographies mean. So the census that we do every 10 years with the decennial census, but also with the ACS, when the census publishes data, they do not publish individuals. They group people together into geographies, and the smallest geography we use for the census is the block group. So a block group isn't technically a block, because even a block within the census isn't just one city block. It's actually based on density of population. So a block group is about 400 to 1,500 people, and that'll change with the 2020 census, of course, because the size will grow.
All right, that's what I was.
Yeah, so from there you can see the differences of block. So in the case of Philadelphia, the density of population is much larger, and so because of that, the block groups are much smaller. Whereas over here in Camden, the block group is gigantic because no one lives along the waterfront, and the housing along the backside are mainly detached homes.
I understand.
Yeah.
And there was just that one thing that you showed us at the very beginning. It was the overview that was like to look at everything at the, just to get that overview. It was, and I don't know how you got to that.
Oh, that's on the main website, and I'll send you that link, but it's...
Oh, all right. Okay. You're going to send that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you want to dig about anything otherwise on your own, there's a support link at the very top. This takes you to the different tutorials that we talk about, and it'll break down the features in much more detail as well.
Thank you.
And this will be and you said this session was recorded and we can access it.
Yeah. I'll post this on our internal page, and then I'll share it with everyone, and then that way you can pull it up at any time.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much then for your time.
All right.
All right. If you have any questions, use it. Contact me at any time. Otherwise, have a great day and stay safe.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You too. Appreciate it.
Thank you.